We've done Felix the Shark, we've done the scoop, now it's time for You're the Band. This is absolutely the most interesting story in Fazbear Frights Book 12, and it helped to debunk a theory too many people believe, and have been believing ever since the Ultimate Guide came out. In this video, I'm going to be doing a summary of You're the Band, pointing out my theories along the way, and at the end I'm going to explain why this story prevents the Stitchline Fazbear Frights universe from being in the game universe. But I'm also going to talk about all the other evidence I know of that also goes against the theory. Although I have more Fazbear Frights stories that I haven't read yet, this is the final Fazbear Frights story, and will be the final Fazbear Frights summary I ever do. It won't be my last summary overall though, because I will be doing summaries for each and every story in Tales from the Pizzaplex when it comes out in July. And remember, though there aren't any more Fazbear Frights summary videos, there will still be some theories on some of the older Fazbear Frights stories, because I haven't read every single one yet. But anyways, let's get started with You're the Band, the final ever story in Fazbear Frights. The main character of this story is Sylvia. She's a mother to a young boy named Timmy, and the story starts with her being called by Dr. Monroe. Timmy had recently been acting strangely, so Sylvia had taken him to see a child psychologist. Timmy was always a happy kid and he never had a problem, so it surprised Sylvia when she was called by Timmy's teacher, Miss Lotz, and was told Timmy wasn't acting right. Dr. Monroe led Sylvia to the room Timmy was in, and she saw that he was drawing. Dr. Monroe said that she encouraged kids to draw during sessions. Dr. Monroe asked Timmy if she could show Sylvia the drawing he had made, and he nodded. Sylvia looked at the picture to see a drawing of a brown bear, a blue bunny, and a yellow chicken. Timmy was asked to explain the drawing to Sylvia, and he said that the characters were Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica, and that they were the band in Freddy's when he went there. Sylvia says that Timmy has been saying that a lot recently, but that there aren't any Freddys, and there hasn't been any since the tragic event 30 years ago. And this already raises a red flag, and it already goes against StitchlineGames. See, the story takes place 30 years after the missing children incident. There's much debate on when the missing children incident takes place in the games, but in Fazbear Frights it takes place in 1985. And if this story is 30 years after 1985, that means this story is in 2015. The most important thing is that Sylvia says that there has not been any Freddys since then, and that means the Stitchline cannot be in the game universe because there is a Freddy's location in 1987 and one between 1988 and 1993 in the game timeline, so this alone prevents the Stitchline from being in the games. Now, you may be saying that the story isn't in the Stitchline, it is a scrapped story after all, but this story is actually mentioned in the final epilogue, meaning it is canon to the Stitchline. And there are other reasons as I'll go over later. Anyway, back to the story. Dr. Monroe told Sylvia that she can probably help Timmy, but she was confused about how he was acting. Sylvia said that it was almost as if Timmy was disappearing and his body kept being taken over by some other kid, acting like Freddy's was in the present day. Then we cut to a week earlier. Timmy had recently got into Freddy's, and Sylvia didn't know how to keep up with his Freddy phase, because at the current time it was hard to find Freddy's merch for Timmy since it closed 30 years ago. Timmy had also been watching conspiracy theory videos on the murders at Freddy's, and yeah. Sylvia was able to find a vintage Freddy Fazbear Halloween mask on an auction website posted by a user named Retro Merch with 3s instead of E's. Nobody had bid on the mask yet, it was on sale at the moment, but there was an option to buy it now for $100. It was pretty expensive, but Sylvia knew Timmy would love it for his birthday, so she bought it. Later on, Timmy asked Sylvia who her favorite character was from Freddy's, and she said it was Chica. Timmy says that his favorite animatronic was Freddy because he's the star. As it turns out, Timmy is 7 years old and he's turning 8 on his birthday. I mean, that's how birthdays work. Sylvia was a single mother to Timmy. Her husband, Timmy's father, James, was really excited to be a father, but he was sadly killed in an accident at the construction site only a month before the baby was due. Sylvia went back onto that site with the Freddy head and searched up Freddy Fazbear to see if anything else came up. There was nothing. She searched up the user as well, but there was still nothing. Sylvia just hoped she wasn't scammed. The existence of Retro Merch had no longer had any evidence. She didn't really expect the mask to come, but it did come, only 2 days before the party. It was in a slightly beaten up box, and the mask was a bit dirty and weathered, but she was able to clean it. Obviously it didn't look new, but it wasn't supposed to, since it was vintage. Sylvia had set up the stuff for the party, and her friend Maria came over and said that she had done a great job with all this. Sylvia had drawn a picture of Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica that had a caption that said that all three of them had said happy birthday to Timmy. There were a bunch of balloons, a piñata, and the porch had a Freddy curtain that looked like a stage. Maria also brought her son, Miles, who was going to turn 8 in February. Miles and Timmy were friends. Miles went and played with Timmy and his other friend on the swings. Then Timmy opened his presents, and he opened up the mask, and he loved it. He put it on and he sang a song with his friends, pretending he was Freddy. Sylvia assumed the song he sang was one that he learned from one of the Freddy videos online, and that it was one the animatronics sang back in the day. Timmy really liked his mask, but he also claimed it was really heavy. He said thank you for all his presents, and then his party was over. That night, though, when Sylvia was reading in bed, she heard screaming coming from Timmy's room. She rushed to his room and found him sitting up in bed, looking horrified. Timmy said he just saw something dark and really fast on the edge of his bed. Sylvia told him it was probably just a dream, but Timmy was sure it was real. My first thought when I saw this was Freddles in FNAF 4, since they sit on your bed and when you shine the light on them, they shoot under your bed quickly. But it's really not Freddles at all, as you'll see later on. Sylvia wanted to show Timmy that there was nothing here, so she checked under his bed and his closet, and there was nothing here. So she turned on the hall light so it wouldn't be as dark in Timmy's room. As she left the room, the Freddy mask looked like it was watching her leave the room. In the morning, she felt like she was wrong to dismiss Timmy so fast, and she heard rustling coming from the backyard. She thought it might be an intruder, so she went to call the police. But then she saw a man outside her window who promptly held up his hands. He looks to be in his early 20s, and he didn't look like he was a serial killer or anything. He apologized, and she went outside to see what he wanted. He looked to be a college kid, and he said that he was looking for his dog. Then he noticed the decorations from Timmy's party, and he recognized Freddy Fazbear. Sylvia told him she had to go, and that she hopes he finds his dog. She went back inside and talked to Timmy. He was going to be going to Miles' house for a sleepover tonight, but then he told his mom that the kids from Freddy's were at a birthday party too. Sylvia was confused. Timmy said that people found the dead kids lined up against the wall wearing party hats. And this lines up with what we see in Into the Pit, solidifying that this story is in the Stitch line. But this further proves that the Stitch line is not in the game's timeline. In Fazbear Frights, the missing children aren't missing. Timmy just said that they were found lined up against the wall. In the games, the children were never found, and even if they were stuffed in the animatronics. And that's also yet another reason why. Let's just pretend for a second that the kids in this story were not found, and that they were missing. They were found, but let's just pretend for a second that they weren't. The missing children in the game's timeline were never grouped together. William stuffed the kids into the suits as he killed them. In Pizza Party, we play as Gabriel going to his birthday, and there are already party hats on Chica and Bonnie, meaning the kids died and were already stuffed. Also, when Gabriel follows William, he is immediately Freddy. And you may think Pizza Party isn't an exact copy of the missing children incident, but that's incorrect. Glitchtrap was an unintentional virus that got into the game, meaning the ending of Pizza Party is not the intended ending for the game, meaning Glitchtrap luring Gabriel and all the party hats on the animatronics were done by William, recreating the murders. But that's not all. In Toy Chica the high school years, every time Toy Chica kills someone, a piece of them is stuffed into her backpack, represent William stuffing the kids into the animatronics. And each time she finds a new guy, the previous one is already stuffed. What that means is that, for example, by the time Cassidy was being killed, Gabriel, Fritz, Jeremy, and Susie were already stuffed in the animatronics. That means the kids were never grouped together or against the wall or found by people when they weren't inside the suits, making StitchlineGames impossible. Now back to the story. Sylvia tells Timmy that he shouldn't believe everything he reads online because it's not always true. But then Timmy says he knows it was true because he was there. Sylvia said that he's only 8 and that the murders happened 30 years ago, but Timmy insisted that he was there, speaking in a deeper and slower voice. This seems to be a callback to Freddy's laugh in FNAF 1 being a slowed down clip of a little girl giggling, and the pitch compensation causes it to sound really deep. So, what does this mean? Well, you'll see. Now, Sylvia was getting a bit scared of what was wrong with her kid, and then Timmy says that she shouldn't be scared, and that she was nice, so there was no reason to hurt her. Now Sylvia was genuinely freaked out. Later on, when Timmy was at Miles' house, Sylvia researched his symptoms, which came up with nothing, so she decided a psychologist would be the best course of action. but then she heard some type of rattling coming from behind her in the vent. She kept looking back into it, but nothing was there. Then she realized it was coming from above her, which made her think that maybe she had raccoons. She used a stepladder to look into the attic, but nothing was there. Then she felt something grab her leg, but it was just Timmy. She questioned why he was here and not at Miles' house. Then she told him to go to bed because it was late, and she told him to tell her if he had any trouble sleeping. Timmy agreed, which Sylvia found weird because he usually argued about that. Then Maria came over because she was worried about Timmy leaving. Sylvia said that she was surprised about him bailing, and Maria said that she was surprised about a lot of the stuff that he was saying tonight. What he was saying made no sense. He was also acting like the video game technology was new to him despite them playing it all the time. At this point, I'm guessing you can figure out what was going on here. The vintage Freddy Fazbear mask is not just a Halloween mask. It's the head of the original Freddy Fazbear, still inhabited by the spirit that possessed Freddy. And now that spirit was possessing Timmy. Also, I'd like to mention that the fact that a Freddy Fazbear mask is one of the main parts of the story really reminds me of the Freddy mask from FNAF 2, and that becomes more important later on. It turns out Maria had actually walked Timmy home because he was acting weird and his actions had upset Miles. Sylvia told Maria that she would go to see a child psychologist if this behavior continues. Later on, Sylvia went to the store to get food for Timmy because she was tired of making him the same thing for his lunch every day. Timmy pointed to canned pasta. Sylvia didn't understand. Usually he hated canned pasta, but in his low and slow voice, he said that he liked these ones. That was the last straw. Sylvia called the child psychologist. After she got off the phone, she noticed Timmy was putting a lot of spaghetti wheels into the cart, and Sylvia said that they didn't need all of them and put a couple back. But then Timmy went full Hulk mode and screamed that he liked them, and Sylvia was sure everyone in the store and some people outside it could hear him. She was scared of what was happening to her son. Sylvia didn't press on it, so she just said that they'll stock up on it, and then she asked if he wanted anything else, and he said he wanted strawberry ice cream. Timmy hates strawberry ice cream. The psychologist's office called her back and said that there was an opening at 10 a.m. the next day so she could take Timmy. Timmy ate spaghetti wheels and salad for dinner, but Sylvia just had salad. Then she told Timmy to take a bath, play games for half an hour, and then go to bed. But Timmy said he hated baths and wanted a shower, which is again the opposite of his normal opinion. Timmy went to go take a shower and Sylvia did the dishes. While she was doing them, she saw an unfamiliar face staring at her through her kitchen window. She immediately dialed 911. Then she heard talking upstairs, and she rushed up to Timmy's room. She opened the door just a crack and saw Timmy talking to a humanoid-looking shadow with white glowing eyes, and it was huge. The shadow turned to look at her and then disappeared. This is another reason that You're the Band is clearly in the Stitch line. The shadow is Eleanor. The police came to the door and Sylvia gave them as good of a description as she could of the man at the window. Sylvia didn't know what to do, and she was scared, so she called her mom and asked if they could stay with her for a few days, and her mom said that they were always welcome. Sylvia also mentioned that Timmy's odd behavior, and that she was taking him to see a psychologist the next day. Sylvia's mom said that it was good that she was getting Timmy help. Then we cut back to where we were at the beginning of the story. We just continue where we left off from the beginning, and Dr. Monroe gave Sylvia the advice to engage him whenever Timmy dissociates, and to talk to him about things that they have already been through in real life, and that Timmy is normally interested, because that way she won't give him a chance to be someone else. And then they went to Sylvia's parents' house, which Sylvia was happy to do as she didn't want to deal with whatever was happening at her house right now. At dinner, Timmy didn't want salad, which was weird because he usually did. Sylvia's mom questioned it, which prompted Timmy to yell that he doesn't want salad. Sylvia thought now would be a good time to remind Timmy of what he usually did when they came over. So Sylvia's dad said that maybe later Timmy could help him out in his workshop, and maybe they could build a birdhouse that Timmy could take home with him later on. Then Sylvia's mom suggested that they make sugar cookies later. Sylvia's dad realized that Timmy's grandma accidentally gave him a butter knife, so he went over to help him cut his steak. Timmy, seeing a sharp knife in his grandpa's hands, literally tackled him to the ground, tried to get the knife from his hand, and started yelling, "No! Don't hurt Timmy! Don't hurt Timmy!" Yep. Sylvia got Timmy off his grandpa, and his grandpa explained that he was just going to help him cut his steak. Then Timmy said that he just saw the knife and had to protect the others. Whatever that means. After dinner, Sylvia's mom and dad said that if need be, they could live with them for a while and get a new house closer to them. That way they could help out with Timmy and they could get out of the house where the creepy dude was. Sylvia said that she would consider it. Later, Sylvia heard a bunch of dogs barking outside and it didn't sound like they were stopping. She went outside but saw nothing that she thought could have sparked the barking. She went back inside to check on Timmy, but when she checked his room, Timmy was gone and his window was open. She ran to the window and looked out. She yelled out his name, but no one could hear it because of the dogs. She then spotted a huge shadowy figure holding Timmy's hand and walking away with him. What is this, Slender? She chased after him, but she just couldn't reach them. Then she was pulled into the bushes by the man she recognized to be the dude who said he was looking for his dog. And he was also the same guy that was looking into the window before. As it turns out, this guy's name is Mike. And you may just be like, oh, this is just a parallel or a coincidence. But no, this guy is a security guard at the old Freddy Fazbear's Pizza building. And a few weeks ago, someone broke it and stole Freddy Fazbear's head. The same one Timmy got for his birthday. So to recap, security guard at Freddy's named Mike. This further debunks StitchlineGames though, because this story takes place in 2015, and Mike here is in his 20s. If Mike was born in 1967, which he likely was, just assuming that he was 16 in FNAF 4, then he would be nearly 50 in 2015. And you can't really just say that this is just a parallel, because this Freddy head is from the animatronic, and contains the spirit that actually possessed Freddy, despite that spirit being present in the Funtime animatronics, meaning this story wouldn't be able to take place if the Stitchline was in the games. Anyway, Mike explains that he had already taken the mask from their house, and Sylvia asks how she can get her son back, because he was being taken into the woods by the shadow. This seems like a massive parallel to Midnight Motorist. The parent of this kid finds the window open and their child gone. The child is being taken away by a shadowy figure, which is a theory I've had for a long time, that the figure out the window was Shadow Freddy, luring the bite victim to Freddy's or Fredbear's. And after reading the story, I thought maybe it could have actually been Shadow Freddy luring the bite victim to witness William killing Charlotte, and all this was likely what the bite victim saw. Not only that, but Mike led Sylvia to his car, and they drove to, you guessed it, the old Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, solidifying the parallel. Mike led Sylvia to a show stage where Timmy stood between Bonnie and Chica, singing a song together, and this is yet another thing that debunks StitchlineGames. The animatronics are intact, but they were destroyed in the game's timeline by William in the Follow Me minigames. Another thing that is very interesting about this is Timmy being on stage in between Bonnie and Chica, but Timmy acts as Freddy, but he's not really Freddy. And this reminds me of the FNAF 2 dream sequences, when we are Freddy and Bonnie and Chica grow more and more suspicious of us. And the fact that Mike is associated with this, and the fact that the player of FNAF 2 wears a Freddy mask all the time, and the Freddy mask in this story is what causes all this to happen. To me, this all shows that Mike is one of the players of FNAF 2, and most definitely Fritz Smith. But that's not all. When Sylvia saw Timmy on stage, she started running to get him off, but Mike tells her to stop just before black and white striped tentacles shot out from the cracks in the walls and wrapped around Sylvia quickly. The puppet is in FNAF 1, just like we see in those FNAF 2 dream sequences. Honestly, this is one of the most interesting Fazbear Fright stories to me because there's just so much lore in it. Though it's definitely not my favorite, it is a very good story. Mike ran to get the tentacles off Sylvia, but he couldn't. Sylvia told him to just save Timmy, but Mike said to wait 1 minute. Mike ran up on stage and put Freddy's head onto Timmy. The eyes glowed, Mike took it off again and threw it to the side, then pulled Timmy off the stage. Then a panel opened in the ceiling and the puppet came down. Then another figure in the room walked back onto the stage. It was Freddy, wearing the head Mike had just thrown. The puppet went back up into the ceiling, which freed Sylvia. Mike and Sylvia each grabbed one of Timmy's hands and they got out of there. When they were in the car, Mike explained that there was a spirit in Freddy's head, and when Timmy put it on, the spirit went into him, and the shadow knew it, which is why it went after Timmy. Sylvia and Timmy agreed that they would keep all this a secret. The next morning, Sylvia decides to bake Timmy some chocolate chip cookies, and they also both decide to take the day off of work and school and spend time with each other, and that's where the story ends. Despite how f***ing insane this story is, I absolutely love it, and it is definitely my favorite story in Felix the Shark. But I have to say without a doubt that this is one of, if not the most interesting story in the entire Fazbear Frights series. But I have to say without a doubt that this is one of, if not the most interesting story in the entire Fazbear Frights series, and I think it is a fantastic ending to the series. As for the lore, we already talked about all the reasons this story debunks StitchlineGames, but there's even more that I haven't talked about yet, from outside of this story. So let's talk about all that right now. In what is currently my most recent theory video, I talked about why Afton is dead inside Springtrap. Go watch this video if you haven't already. Also, I think the YouTube algorithm liked that video because about 20 hours after the video released, it was at about 800 views. But then about 24 hours after the video was released, it was suddenly at 2,000. In a span of like 4 hours, it got like 1,200 views. Now I found like a nice sweet spot at like 3.5 thousand at the time I'm writing this video, but this video is probably going up in like 5 days, so it's probably a bit higher now. But anyway, that video is me proposing that William Afton is not actually immortal, but actually is dead inside Springtrap and has been all this time. Go watch that video first before you conduct an opinion on it, because there are only a few pieces of evidence, but they're really strong ones. But if William Afton is dead, then the Man in Room 1280 cannot take place, because at that point, William is alive. But let's just say for a second that he was alive in the games, because many people do have that opinion. So disregarding the idea of him being dead, just assuming for a second that he is alive, there are still some aspects of the Man in Room 1280 that contradict the events of the game universe. Quote from the Man in Room 1280. Fact 1. The man appeared to be burned to a crisp. What lay in the bed in room 1280 resembled a human being only vaguely, in that it had the requisite shape. It had a head, a torso, 2 arms, and 2 legs. There, the similarity to humans ended. End quote. The part we need to pay attention to is the 2 arms part, because according to StitchlineGames believers, this is William Afton after the FNAF 6 fire. And that's very likely, since in the epilogues it is very much hinted that there was a FNAF 6 fire incident in this Fazbear Frights Stitchline universe, whether it's in the games or not. But in FNAF 6, in the games, William Afton was less damaged in some aspects, but was also more damaged in other aspects in comparison to how he was in FNAF 3, in that he clearly rebuilt himself with some old Spring Bonnie parts, but has since lost some pieces of himself, including pretty much one entire ear, and more importantly, his left arm. Meaning he only has 1 arm, not 2. And the other thing is that in Security Breach, it's revealed that Afton has been trapped down under the Pizzaplex the whole time. Now, I get that some people are going to say that this isn't Afton's original body, because flesh is literally growing over him, but that's exactly why it has to be Afton's body. Because regeneration is an effective remnant, it must be the cause of the regeneration of Afton's body. But this has to have been his original body because there's actual organs here, and the growth would need to have a base. The flesh can't just grow from nothing. So Afton's body has to be here, which doesn't make sense under StitchlineGames because Afton's body literally exploded. The next reason behind StitchlineGames being stupid as is Shadow Bonnie. Shadow Bonnie in Fazbear Frights is Eleanor, who is obviously evil. This is completely different to Shadow Bonnie in the games, because Shadow Bonnie helps the kids and helps set up Happy's Day. This, coupled with the puppet in the books making a whisper sound similar to Shadow Bonnie in FNAF AR, implies that Shadow Bonnie is the agony of Charlotte, aka the puppet. Finally, we have the problem of the 7th victim. Towards you get the high school years, 100% implies that there is some other spirit other than the missing children plus Charlotte. There is one other victim. Now, this isn't someone from Save Them or any other incident. This is a character who died in an event outside of any of those 4 dead children events. The problem lies within Into the Pit showing there to be half a dozen children, meaning 6. This is an issue because it is not a theory but a straight up fact that there are only 5 children in the missing children incident. Some people try to argue that this is the retcon Scott mentioned a while back, but that doesn't work because he said that it was a small and seamlessly added retcon, and adding an entire new victim to the missing children incident who goes on to become the spirit behind an entire game in the series in Ultimate Custom Night simply does not work. Others argue that Into the Pit is not an accurate representation of the Fazbear Frights missing children incident, but that is a stupid argument, especially after You're the Band shows many details of the missing children incident matching up with Into the Pit, and both Into the Pit and You're the Band are part of the stitch line, meaning this argument cannot be made. And the final issue lies in the most unexpected of places. A lot of people disregard FNAF World as a game because it treats itself as a game, so it seems clear that the gameplay isn't canon, or at least not canon in the sense that this all happens in the literal world the game is set in. But Scott himself has already confirmed that the lore of the game is canon, and that he did tie all the stuff in the game into the canon in some way. That means that while the gameplay isn't really canon, it can contain lore hints, such as the Glitch Bear. That makes something in the main hub of Update 2 very interesting. Around the bottom left of the map, we see 6 graves, representing children that William Afton has killed. Somewhere else in the map contains 1 separate grave. Now, at first you might think that this means there are actually 6 missing children, since there's 6 graves together and 1 separated, like how Charlotte was killed separately from the missing children. But actually, these 6 graves that are together are right next to Purple Guy. What this implies is that these 6 kids are kids William actually killed, and that the 7th separate grave is one that wasn't actually killed directly by William. And this actually matches up pretty well with one of the death prompts in Toy Chica the high school years. One of them is very similar to Midnight Motorist. Bite Victim is lured out his window, and as for why it would be included here, well, I actually explained earlier in this video. The animatronic outside was likely Shadow Freddy, and Shadow Freddy is also Nightmare. And Nightmare in Ultimate Custom Night says that he is William's wickedness made of flesh. And that means that Shadow Freddy is basically made up of William's negative emotions. So in some sense, Shadow Freddy is a metaphor and a representation of William Afton. So basically, the Bite Victim has to be one of the victims in Toy Chica the high school years. So either he is the 7th victim, which means Andrew can't be, or BV5th is true, which doesn't work under StitchlineGames because StitchlineGames requires the missing children incident to be in 1985, which doesn't work under BV5th. So no matter how you look at it, the 7th victim under StitchlineGames does not work. But anyways, guys, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, then please do leave a like and subscribe. Stay tuned for my upcoming theory on the mystery of the Fazbear CEO and Patient 46. Also, I want to take a second to plug my playthrough series on Poppy Playtime Chapter 2. I understand Poppy Playtime is a controversial game, but if you separate it from the developers, it's actually an awesome game. And Chapter 2 was even better than Chapter 1 in my opinion. So if you want to, check out my 5-hour long live stream, 3.5 hours of which is me playing through the game. But if you don't have time for that, check out my edited down videos of the live stream. So far, part 1 and 2 are out, and part 3 is coming tomorrow, and the ending will be posted on Wednesday. On Thursday will be the release of my FNAF Felix the Shark book theory discussion with my friends, and another project I have in the works currently is a theory on Poppy Playtime. So to recap, tomorrow, Poppy Playtime Chapter 2, Part 3. Wednesday, Poppy Playtime Chapter 2, Part 4. Thursday, Felix the Shark theory discussion. Friday, most likely my Fazbear CEO and Patient 46 video, and after that, it's unclear of the dates of the upcoming videos, but there will be a Poppy Playtime theory, a reaction to MatPat's Poppy Playtime theory whenever that comes out, a theory about an underrated FNAF character responsible for most of the story, a theory on the scoop, a video on how I would personally change FNAF lore if I could, and much, much more. But anyways, guys, I'm going to end the video there, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye, guys!
Oh, it's
tape. Hopefully I didn't miss any through this. Huh.
My name is Dude.
Is that Jacksepticeye?
Jacksepticeye?
What the hell?